Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanity 8.0, a podcast where we talk about our post-truth present and our transhuman future, with the aim of sketching out the outlines of what awaits us in the years and the decades ahead of us. This podcast is brought to you by Rokos. Companies with limited IT budgets and personnel can now get the same cybersecurity protection as big enterprises. Rokos' Secure Access Service Edge, SASE solution, with zero trust, provides enterprise-grade comprehensive cybersecurity so that you can focus on your business. For more, please visit www.rokos.com. That's ROQOS.com. And now, here's your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo.
No, I just wanted to expand because I believe that the focus of transhumanists, most of the ones I've talked to and interviewed here, is about the individual. How do we make this individual better, right? And then when I push back and say, well, but what are the consequences on society and so forth, right? They are very optimistic in the same sense as, say, Adam Smith was about capitalism, right? So just take care of yourself, and then emerging good will transpire. Now, I'm not completely unsympathetic to that, to be honest with you. But I was watching, and I watched it several times, this movie called A Beautiful Mind, right? About this guy who's really, really smart. Forgetting his name.
The mathematician.
Yes,
At Princeton, yeah, who does all this kind of
yes, remember that. And then the one thing that was really interesting there is that he didn't completely reject Adam Smith, right? But he said, his concept of us just pursuing our own good is not going to yield the best solution for all, right? And I think he gave the interesting example of a beautiful lady shows up, right, with her friends who are not as beautiful as her. There was that interesting scene, right? And then these guys are talking amongst each other. How do we go and approach these ladies? And he told them, because they all wanted to go to the most beautiful lady. And he said, if you do that, if one of us goes and gets that lady first, right? The rest of us, they will be rejected by the other ladies because they will see themselves as second-class citizens and they don't want to be taken. So he said, why don't we do this? Instead of going to that lady, we have this strategy, game plan it, like you're saying, right? We go, we invite the first ones who are not, they'll feel really good about themselves, right? And they will accept the dates, right? And then all of a sudden, everybody ends up with a date, right? So that was a beautiful example of how, by just thinking a little bit, right, strategizing, you can come with a better good for everyone, the total sum, than just everybody pursuing that lady, right? So I love that example. So I think what might need to happen really for these transhumanists is to start thinking like that, right? What strategy can we have so that we both have our cake and eat it too, meaning we all end up with a good state, but the outcome for everybody is much better than what do you think about that kind of like having not only a better strategy for an individual but also a societal at the society level, right? How do we create at that level where the society itself is now self-governing? We don't have somebody who decides to go and invade a country. It requires maybe, I don't know, mass participation. Because as you well know, when you have a lot of people, this has been shown scientifically, right? When a decision is made by many, many, many people, right? You always end up with the most optimum solution that takes into consideration a lot of complex issues and considerations than if it was a dictator, right? And maybe that's the sort of the trans-societal thing that will get us there. And I wanted your thoughts on that, the concept of thinking about society in addition to thinking about the human being. And I think the ummah, for example, the concept of the ummah in Islam, I think has something to do with that. Islam tells us, again, I use Islam in broad sense. Islam tells us, take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your mind, eat well, don't abuse your body. Also, number two, take care of your family, right? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, but don't ignore your neighbor. Don't ignore your neighbor. Don't ignore the society around you. Don't ignore those who are different than you, right? Accept them. So it has that ethos of start with the self and then go beyond that. And I just wanted to get a sense of what you think.
Yes. No, I think that the example you gave of that movie, and so with some strategy, and also understanding that only one person will get the pretty one. So that's a lottery, right? That's a
Yes.
lottery. So there's a lottery, but there was also a strategy of altruism that
Yes.
all of us need to have not only one, but one will get the slightly better one. It will be the way it is in life
Yeah.
that not all of us have all the talents that we have or all the
Yes.
possessions that we want, but we settle with certain things. So I think part of this conversation on transhumanism, you're absolutely right. It's all about the individual is going to be
Yes.
this strong and so on. But can we think about these issues a little bit more altruistically? Can we
Yes.
think about how this will benefit a larger society? If could we have a community participating in some of these technologies where those who need it most, or everybody can afford it, and so on. Look at first, it's going to be very expensive, and some people will be excluded. But over time, when there's greater use, then things become cheaper. Imagine how expensive a computer was 20, 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
today
Exactly.
it's achievable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think all of these things work in terms of scale. We must
Mhm.
just do that. Adam Smith obviously had this interesting concept of
Yes.
the invisible hand, and that the market will do this kind of thing. So can I? So he had a sense that the market will be the leveler, right? The
Right.
market is the leveler. The invisible hand will balance out things. I'm not an economist, so I don't want to delve into that. So I'm just airing a view. But I think if we approach this question with some altruism,
Yeah.
and that, or not only think of it in terms of the individual, but of how it will benefit collectives, I think we will have less of a problem,
Yeah.
explore it, and to ask and to begin that conversation.
I
But
agree.
unfortunately, right now it's the Elon Musk's and it's the cryonic technologies that some people who have money, then they freeze their bodies and those kind of stuff and so on. That there are some aspects of this that does bother me. For instance,
I agree. Yeah.
uh, people want immortality.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Immortality.
that is a problem for me
Yeah.
as a religious person, as a Muslim. No one has immortality. Everybody's life is going to come to an end, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you immortalize yourself through your deeds.
Yeah.
Your deeds will immortalize you in history,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
communities, also, but not physical, bodily immortality. We
Yeah.
just not been made like that, and this idea that we will become bionic or that we will become, then you're going to be a
Digital. I mean,
and
there's the digital, like the digital uploading of the self.
of the self. Yes, yeah, no, no. So obviously these will
Yeah.
the way I understand it right now, is that these will be kind of enhancements, possibilities that you can tap into, remember certain things what you were. It can become a doppelganger for you and so
Hmm.
on. But we will still have these bodies. But I know that the sci-fi imagination is also scaring some people or making many people excited.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The sci-fi imagination that I know very little of, um, but I know that some people think that is great and we're moving in the direction. Some people are being scared by that. I take a kind of a more wait and see approach, and let
Hmm.
me try it out and let me explore it without saying no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? I'm very open to the idea to see how we can optimize the benefits of this for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the I agree 100% with you there on that. I think what our saving, I think what will save us is to get away from the top-down arrangement that we have now,
Hmm.
where a decision by one person to drop an atomic bomb, right, uh, resulting in a reaction from another leader or a bunch of folks, right? I don't know, half a dozen of them, right,
Hmm.
who decide the fate of humanity. I think participation, right, having a lot of people participate and have a voice, uh, but at the same time, figuring out, and this is the biggest problem we've always had, in terms of politics, is how do we act? How do we act? Meaning, how do we do things? Meaning, as a society, huh? We decide that we are going to build a dam, or we decide that we are going to build this road. Or how do we do that in a democratic society without being paralyzed, right? Because when you're trying to reach consensus, right? At least the way democracy has been set up now, you get into the squabbles, right? For example, you compare India to China, right? China is able to move a lot faster than India because India is democracy, let's say, right? People say that, right? The question is, okay, we know that if people were involved in decision-making process, World War I and World War II would not have happened. And if World War I would not have happened, Hitler would not have arisen, because he was the result of the chaos that ensued from World War I. World War I was these folks, right, who are at the top, deciding that they had the paradigm of empire. I need to conquer this land, I need to conquer that land, and they were playing that game. And it took just one match, and you had. But if it was for people, if they were voting, all of them, nobody would vote for a war. Maybe like 1% would vote for war, but everybody else like, let's figure out a way to solve this problem. Let's negotiate. And when you negotiate at every step, you are sort of lowering the temperature, keeping things from escalating, right? So I think personally, and this is why the concept of ummah continues to be really interesting to me, is having a brotherly, sisterly world where people are able to communicate, and the technology is getting there. For example, the technology of, I say something in Arabic, you speak Arabic, but let's say I don't speak any other language except Arabic, and somebody speaks only German. I can speak my Arabic, it gets translated into German, he hears it, and he answers, and we can have a real-time conversation. Today, we have gotten to that point. So everything is there. We can communicate, right? There is democracy in the sense that we all understand the concept of, you know what, if I participate, I will change my fate. And maybe we get to a point where these big decisions that may, like technology being used in a bad way, we avoid it by having us, the low level folks. I call myself a low level person, having us be part of the voices. And I think Islam, in my opinion, Islam is very much aligned with that, right? Islam is very much aligned with no kings, no dictators, right? The ummah and the shura, all of that just is there. What do you think about me coming from that angle?
Right. No, I think there are immense possibilities in the concept of the ummah. But like any idea, like democracy, it can be turned into an instrument of control, right? And so I think one has to make sure that one deploys the idea of the ummah in a way that without demagogues taking charge of it and saying this is what the ummah is saying.
That's right.
Or some people in a certain capital say this is what democracy is, and not testing it with other people sitting out in other parts of the world. Now, and one of the you use the example of democracy. Part of the democracy now is that we have so much an information overload that we can no longer reach decent consensus on things. So with the result that it seems that if there is going to be autocratic possibilities that's going to come out because of the failure of communication in democratic societies, then I think democratic societies might be the first to move towards autocratic regimes, because they can't deal and they can't reach decisions. So someone is going to make a decision for the whole country.
I mean, paralysis. I see that.
The paralysis, or the fact that nothing has happened. So the road must be built, and we can't get the people to agree where the road must be built. And someone's going to say, I'm just going to build the road right here. Right. So that we can get from point A to point B. Similarly, in the idea of the ummah, the question of shura, these are all very, very important things that listen to the elders. The elders must listen to the younger. Everybody must be included. Everybody is equal. There's no distinction between black and white, between Arab and non-Arab. All children of Adam, and Adam is made out of clay. That the Prophet's last speech and so on. But we know that the speech is one thing, and the ideal is one thing, and the realization is the other, right? And that autocrats and monarchs and others are also putting paid to people's aspirations, and that human development doesn't take place because some people monopolize the wealth of a country and so on and so forth. So the idea of ummah, and they can do all of those things in the name of the ummah. by
True.
using the word ummah. So
That's true. Yep.
so what we need is a greater literacy and sophistication and understanding and discussion of what the ummah is,
Yep.
and put those ideas out there. And therefore, there has to be a larger number of people on the one side, and make those other people who utilize and instrumentalize the idea of ummah for their own limited and nefarious purposes, put them out of business. Right?
Yeah.
It's also those kinds of communities that will finally, this larger number of communities, these bigger communities, the, the democracies and people's experiences, they will say, well, we want that implant because
Hmm.
it's good for us,
Hmm.
or we want that enhancement, it is good for us. Um, they might reach there, all right,
Yeah.
and it won't necessarily be evil.
Yeah. No, I don't think
Especially
so. Yeah, I agree.
if the consequences of those actions and the enhancements are going to be moral, and they will not become immoral people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, some time ago, a very important writer wrote "Moral Man, Immoral Society," right?
Hmm.
Niebuhr, "Moral Man, Immoral Society." So immoral society becomes when society, with its technologies and its culture, no longer becomes moral.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we need to watch when we deploy these technologies of transhumanism, whatever enhancements and so on and so forth. Make sure that we always have a moral register on it. Number one, and number two, don't prejudge the moral register on the basis of your current experience,
Yes.
because
Exactly.
the new technologies are going to be game changers. So therefore, you cannot predict their moral outcomes, but can put on guardrails to these conversations. And you can also put on guardrails on the technology. So, for instance, if you think that this experiment is going to result in something very dangerous,
Yeah.
you should have the sensibility to say, I'm going to cancel it right now. Say, for instance, we've discovered that we have the potential, we're working on something, and we discover that there's something much more powerful than the hydrogen bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we do? Yeah.
I mean, are we going to nix it? Or are we going to, if a limited number of people have that, are we going to use it to our advantage, and in order
Yeah.
to oppress other people or to threaten other
Yeah.
people, right?
Well,
That
yeah. I think the key thing there is the we. Who is the we who's
who is
deciding?
the we? Who is the
Right? Who
we?
is the we?
The
Is it the
we.
bunch of
Exactly.
experts who are sitting there and and telling we know better than you, or is it what do you think? I mean, the we, in my opinion, should be the common person, common
Right.
sense, right? I
Right.
really believe that in common sense and having like a Chinese proverb that says, two minds are better than one, and three minds are better than two,
Yes.
because
No.
to think things through, as long as the three minds agree that we need to act, whatever solution they come up with, it's better than the one that two or one came
Yes.
up with.
No. No. Correct.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is, yes, we do require experts to do the work because it requires a certain kind of skill in all these areas, but to always take the people with us, and that means inform the people.
Yeah.
So don't have a town hall meeting
Yeah.
about implants,
Yeah.
brain implants,
Yeah.
without informing those people are these implants going to do, how is it
Yeah.
going to be, what are the possibilities. If you're just going to bring a whole bunch of people in there with a very elementary knowledge of implants, they're going to say no.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you spend 1 or 2 hours by first educating them about the plus side and the negative side of implants and how it's going to work, and yes, at first it's going to be
Yeah.
only for people who can afford it, but over time it can become cheaper, then everybody going to have it.
Yeah.
That can make it
Yeah.
even attractive to such a person. And then your town hall audience that you're trying to poll, be informed, and they become part of your decision making process.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I admire in, say, the even though the U.S. justice system is not where it needs to be, it feels to me that most of the time it works, right? Most of
Yes.
the time it works, right?
Yes.
And so it's interesting that juries, right, which are regular people, right, they sit for days and days and days, and they listen to the evidence and so forth. And I think if there's no corruption or jury tampering or somebody's hiding evidence, right, I think most of the time they come up with the right thing. I
comes
think that
after.
model,
Yes.
I think that
Yes.
model, why isn't that model being used in ethics, right? Bring 12 juries, and talk to them, because we know that there is a system for that. And they can sit for days or sometimes months, the grand juries out there, right? And they listen on it, and it completely justifies if a decision is very, very crucial, right? Here's a instead of having a bunch of experts figuring it out, get these folks, have the experts be in the mix, like the lawyers and so forth, and the judge, right? It's a mix. But the folks who render the judgment at the end are those 12 people who are human, a plumber and 3 what do you
A
think?
plumber and a lawyer
And a lawyer and so forth.
and a taxi driver. Yes. Now
Exactly.
look, this is done by some, but it's not done often enough.
Yeah.
So I was
agree.
part of
Yeah.
was part of a research cohort in Canada
Mhm.
on genes and genetic therapies and so on, and then they brought together groups of Muslims, and put some questions to them, had discussions with them. We had transcripts, and then people gave a variety of opinions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't do this often enough.
Yes.
And these days we can do it.
We can,
We have
exactly.
now we have Zoom. You
Yeah.
can do it. You can bring 8 people in a room,
Yeah.
or 12 people in a
That's a
room.
good idea. I may do that. I may get like
And,
8 people,
and
regular folks, not professors.
get 8 regular folks,
Yeah.
and get 3 experts to explain to them in
Yes.
simple terms,
Yeah.
what is this one therapy we're going to do.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going to be the brain implant, or whatever implant is going to be, whatever enhancement is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let them explain to these 8 or 9 people
Yeah.
in layperson's terms.
Yes.
Then also tell them the upside and the downside, and let them ask questions. And then afterwards, tell them, now what do you think?
And the beauty about if I want to lean on that model, because the beauty of this of the jury system is you have 2 sides who are arguing for 2 different things, right? And the jury never talks. They listen, listen, listen. And what do? They go and they talk amongst themselves. They try to convince each other to come up with an action, right? Right. So that's really interesting model. And you sit and listen to those 2 guys, right? Do the best that you can, right? Thank you very much. We have brains. We can communicate with each other. They get a jury foreman. It might be 4 hours, might be and they have to convince each other to get complete consensus. And sometimes the jury is hung because they can't figure it out. Right? Maybe, but most of the time it's not. And I think I try from every culture. I try to get something. This is something impressive that I find in the jury system. I think whoever came up with it was a genius, right? Experts, give your best shot, but let the regular folks deal with and then there's action, right? It's not like we guilty, not guilty. Move, take him to prison or her, or leave them alone.
So yeah, what the jury system really teaches us that we have laws, but at the end of the day, before the law is implemented, it's not going to be a single judge that makes the decision, but it's going to be a certain kind of representative will of the community who's going to basically see, did he commit the murder or did he not commit the murder? All the evidence was put to him and her, and
is there reasonable doubt, right?
And this is the boundary, and there's a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Are you convinced by the facts?
Yes.
I mean, if sometimes a jury, very rarely it happens, that the jury comes up with a conclusion that the judge who's supervising the process sees that it is completely contrary, he can then intervene and say,
it's very rare. So there is like those checks.
But it does happen. There's a check. So you, in other words, 9 or 8, 12 people, however many jurors there are, they can't all conspire.
Yes, that's right.
They can't all conspire to commit evil. This is precisely Islamic doctrine of ijma. The doctrine of tawatur. Tawatur means that something that has been reported by consecutive testimony. So many people reported this it comes in the hadith.
So it cannot be manipulated.
In other words, that it is hard to think that all the people could come together and conspire against the truth, that they would all fabricate the story that they understood this in this way, or they saw the Prophet do that. So it's called hadith mutawatir. It's called tawatur. Right? And the definition of tawatur is that it is impossible for people such a big group of people to come together and conspire against the truth.
Yeah. And so which brings us to the end, and we are ending on the note of the other part of the things that interest me, which is post-truth era, right? Maybe we can talk about that some other time. Thank you so much, Professor Moosa. You have been very generous with your time and with your thoughts. I've learned quite a bit in terms of getting my thoughts together. It helps me to speak with folks who are really wise like yourself. I really appreciate your being part of the Human Equity.
You've been listening to Humanity 8.0 with your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo. Brought to you by Rokos. Thanks for listening.